Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners. My name is Rebecca and the senior that I've been cooking for is finally home and well. She was in the hospital for I want to say 6 to 8 weeks, and that was why I did the $100 series to kind of fill that gap until she got home. And now we can start cooking for her and her grandson again. I wasn't continuing to cook for her grandson because he was temporarily staying somewhere else while she was in the hospital. But I am very excited to begin cooking for her again, and I'm very excited to be sharing the meals with you guys again. Since it's been a while since I've done one of these, let's talk about my original inspiration, which was a couple of months ago. I did a dinner from a World War II era cookbook, and I really enjoyed that process. And sometimes I just wanted somebody else to cook for other than just myself, because I really wanted to feel fulfillment, and I have found that I feel fulfillment not only in cooking but in feeding other people. The goal is potentially to give you guys some ideas either for feeding yourself, or if you have a parent or an elderly neighbor to cook for. Again, it's just to give you some inspiration. So we are trying to do this on a budget, and we are trying to do it as efficiently as possible. I've been kind of hesitant to talk about budgetary constraints because I don't want people to criticize doing an act of charity, but also trying to be mindful of the cost. But I think that's an important factor because I want it to be accessible for you guys who are watching these videos as well. So this week on all of the meals, I spent about $85 total, and that should make about 30 plus meals for them. I am using a few items from my own fridge, freezer, and pantry, but otherwise the bulk of the items were included in that $85, and I will include a full shopping list in the description box down below, along with the prices that I paid for everything. The other constraint that I think is a big factor in trying to meal prep either for yourself or for others is time. So this time I'm gonna try to set a 4-hour timer, and we're gonna try to get as much of this done in 4 hours as possible. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so first up, let's go ahead and get a 4-hour timer going. I may not be able to get this all done in 4 hours, but I think it's a good idea to give myself a gauge of how long it takes me to do things and trying to be more efficient, as I mentioned before. So there we go, 4 hours on the clock. Let's get started. I am actually going to start with some vegetable prep, and it is going to take me a little bit longer than it might take somebody else, just because I'm chit-chatting and talking my way through the process. I got red potatoes because they were on sale, and also because I don't have to peel them. So in this case, they are cheaper and more time efficient. I may not be using the entire bag, but let's go ahead and get these washed first. And in an effort to make this even more efficient, I am going to be using my vegetable chopper for a lot of these things. But we're going to do a lot of chopping in this beginning portion. And as I chop these potatoes, I'm going to place them in a bowl of water so they don't oxidize or start to brown on me. So washing, peeling, and dicing all those potatoes took about 10 minutes with the vegetable chopper, so really quick work of that. And as I mentioned, I may not use all of these potatoes, so whatever I don't use, I will probably freeze or save for my own meals throughout this week. So I have a giant bowl of diced red potatoes. I am also going to be switching out my chopper for the fine dice. And now I'm going to start chopping some other vegetables, starting with a bell pepper. I actually have 2 bell peppers. And we're going to fine dice the peppers. So there we go, finely diced bell pepper. Let's do the same with a couple of onions. I have a full bag of onions, but I will probably be doing a handful of them. And I am, of course, saving all of my skins for making stock. I've never cooked on a timer before, so this is kind of fun. I'm trying to learn to be a more efficient cook. I have always been a good cook, but I'm trying to be a more efficient cook. So I think putting myself on a timer is a really good way to make sure that I'm staying within those constraints. Like I said, I think I'm going to do 4, maybe 5 onions. Let's do 5 because I need it for a couple of things today. We're trying to make sure that all of the prep work is taken care of, and again, anything I don't use today, I can always just save for my future meals, or I can freeze them. So we're going for a fine dice on the onion as well. And as you can see, having a vegetable chopper, if you're cooking a lot in bulk and you're trying to like prep a lot of vegetables, that makes very quick work of an otherwise time-consuming job. We are 20 minutes in right now. Next up, we have celery, which I also need to wash. So let me separate all of these stalks. All of this I will save for making stock. So there's our celery. And that is going to be it for the vegetables that I am prepping this week. I lied, there is one more thing I need to prep, which is going to be some garlic. I really only need garlic for one recipe today, so I'm probably only going to do about 3 to 4 cloves. I believe you can save garlic for making stock, but I've also heard conflicting things about that, so I'm not going to be saving the garlic peels for that. You guys will have to let me know if you use garlic peels in your homemade stock or just onions, carrots, and celery. I know leeks are pretty common too, but I never buy leeks for anything. So the first 30 minutes was spent just prepping and chopping vegetables, but that should mean that the rest of this moves fairly quickly because that is usually the most time-consuming part of the process. So now we have some finely diced celery, onion, bell pepper, and then we also have our diced red potatoes. So the first thing I'm going to be making for her today is her personal favorite, which is meatloaf. For this I have 2 pounds of 80/20 ground beef. You can also use 85/15. I probably wouldn't use 73/27 just because it's going to shrink a lot if you use that because of the higher fat content. So this is a shortcut meatloaf, and for that we're going to start with a box of chicken flavored stuffing mix or any flavor stuffing. This has the breadcrumbs, it's got vegetables, it's got seasonings already in it, so that can go directly in the bowl. Probably should be using a slightly larger bowl. Just go ahead and save myself the time on that real quick. Now to the stuffing mix, I'm going to be adding a 1/2 cup of water and a 1/2 cup of ketchup. And I'm just going to give that a toss to start to rehydrate the stuffing mix a little bit. It just makes it easier on my hands because otherwise it's a little crunchy. Now we're going to add in our 2 pounds of ground beef. It does look a little oxidized, but it's still within date and it smells fine. So I just bought it yesterday. And we're also going to crack in 2 eggs. And then using your 2 best tools, which is your hands, we're going to mash that all together until it's all well combined. Now I could add some of my diced onion and diced celery to this, but it's already got celery and onion in the stuffing mix, so I'm not going to add any extra to it. This is how I made it for her last time, and I'm trying to make sure it's consistent. So now our meatloaf is going to go into a loaf pan. I'm not quite sure what size loaf pan this is, but I will include that in the description box as well. Make sure it's nice and compact and even. And that is going to bake at 350 for about an hour. In the meantime, I'm going to get started on her soup on the stovetop. For this, I'm going to be making one of her favorites, which is chicken pot pie soup. And I have been buying meat on markdown and just putting it in my freezer. So this is a pack of chicken breasts that I got for $3.28. I usually go to Food Lion on Wednesdays, sometime in the afternoon, and I'll check for markdowns and kind of buy whatever I can find. Usually what I find is that more often it's like the higher quality cuts of meat that are being marked down, like in this case the Tyson versus the Food Lion brand. And I also really like their Nature's Promise brand. So I use it as an opportunity to get more expensive meats at a cheaper price. I'm just going to be cutting all of these breasts into even cubes. That was about 1.5 pounds of chicken breasts. Busting out the good old soup pot. We're going to start with a couple tablespoons of oil and a couple tablespoons of butter and let that preheat over medium-high heat. All right, once that's preheated, nice and foamy, I'm going to add in my cubed up chicken breasts. And we're going to go ahead and season this with some salt, plenty of pepper, some thyme, I'm not measuring, just eyeballing. Rosemary. And I like to be a little heavy-handed on the sage, so I think that goes really well with the chicken flavors. And lastly, some parsley flakes. I'm going to cook that all together briefly, because I am also going to be adding in some of our diced potatoes, a couple cups of that. Along with about a cup of diced onion, a cup of diced celery, and that minced garlic. And give that a second just to soften up all those vegetables. And I'm going to go in with a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And we're starting to make a roux to thicken up this soup. Now I'm going to be adding in about 4 cups of stock, a little bit at a time. Start with about the first cup. That first cup will dissolve the flour. Then we can go in with the rest of the carton, so 4 cups total. So let's just cover that and let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. Meatloaf is in the oven, soup is simmering on the stovetop, and we are about an hour in. Another thing I'm going to be making her, since it is her first week back, are her favorite muffins that I have been making, which are a mixture of chocolate chip and banana nut muffins. These have been on sale at Food Lion for $1.19 a pack lately, which has been good because I've just been keeping them kind of stocked. I've been trying to keep an eye on sales and buying things whenever they go on sale, especially things that I know that she likes. All right, those are gonna get mixed with 1 cup of milk, and I've also been experimenting with adding mashed banana to them. I just don't have any today, and adding 2 mashed bananas to this works really well as well. You don't have to cut back the milk or anything. I just find that it takes a little bit longer to bake. Instead of like 18 to 20 minutes, it ends up taking closer to like almost 25 to 28 minutes when you add the banana to it. Or you can always increase the temperature of the oven to bake them a little bit faster. I'll definitely experiment with some other muffin flavors down the road as well. Or some other pastries beyond muffins. I just love how quick these are to put together. All right, I'm trying to keep moving and multitasking, so meatloaf is in the oven. I'm gonna toss the muffins in alongside it. The meatloaf still has 30 minutes left. And the muffins are not gonna take that long. They're gonna be closer to 20. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on her breakfast for the week, which the inspiration that I have for the breakfast that I'm making is this Denver breakfast scramble, which is eggs, potatoes, ham, peppers and onions, and cheese. So for that, I got a ham steak, which I got on sale, and hindsight says I probably should have gotten 2 ham steaks because this is kind of small, but this is a smoked ham steak, and I bet I could dice this using my vegetable chopper as well, just to make some quick work of it. Maybe. Vegetable chopper works for a lot of things, but it doesn't look like it works for ham. But live and learn, you know. I'm gonna be making some skillet potatoes to go on the bottom, starting the same way as I did with the soup, with some oil, and now I'm gonna add some butter. So this is about 4 cups of diced potatoes. And I'm gonna add some water to those and let them steam for a minute. I did buy block cheese. I should have bought shredded, especially with the time constraints, but I bought a block of Swiss and a block of cheddar. The Swiss is gonna be for the breakfast because I feel like ham and Swiss go really well together. And then the cheddar is gonna be for one of the dinners that I'm prepping. It doesn't take me a very long time to grate a block of cheese. I do have an electric grater, but I don't particularly want to use that. So I'm just gonna shred it by hand, and it's not gonna take me that long, maybe a couple minutes. So it looks like the water has almost entirely evaporated off. They're not quite there yet. I'm gonna give them a toss. Make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. And you see they're starting to crisp up. And turn the heat down on that a little bit. And I'm gonna season those with salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and paprika. But in with the potatoes, I'm also gonna add some diced onion and bell pepper to make kind of like potatoes O'Brien, along with our diced ham. Actually looks like a pretty good mix of everything. And give that a chance to get some caramelization. I haven't stopped moving yet, and I feel really efficient. That makes me very happy. I'm gonna crack some eggs for scrambling. I used 2 eggs to make the meatloaf. I'm only gonna scramble a dozen. This is an 18 pack of eggs, and I do need at least 1 egg to maybe 2 eggs to make the dessert that I'm making later. As you guys know, I like to add water to my eggs when I scramble them. This makes them extra fluffy. And I think we can transfer the potatoes, ham, peppers, and onions into a large bowl. And then in the same skillet, I'm gonna melt some butter for scrambling the eggs. We're making really good time. I'm only an hour and a half in. So I'm gonna add the scrambled eggs in with the ham, potatoes, peppers, and onions. And give that a toss to make sure everything is mixed together. And I am gonna set that aside to cool at least until it's not steaming anymore before I pack it up into the bowls. So at this point, we've got the breakfast scramble made. The muffins are out of the oven and cooling. I'm pointing to them, you can't see. The meatloaf has a few minutes left, and then the soup is simmering away on the stovetop. So next I'm gonna make some dumplings for the soup. For this, I'm gonna do 1 cup of self-rising flour. And I'm just gonna make a little well in the center there. This is another one of those no hard measurements here. I'm gonna add some milk. You can also use broth or stock. It's kind of like making a biscuit dough, but it is a little bit firmer than a biscuit dough because you don't want it to fall apart when it's in the soup. A little bit more milk. And I'm just gonna knead that together for a second. Add a little bit of flour onto the counter. And I'm just gonna coat that to make sure that it's not sticking to my hands or the countertop. You don't have to cut it. You can also just kind of break it off into little rounds, but I'm gonna cut it into strips. And then I'm gonna cut those strips into little tiny dumplings, and they are gonna expand when you go to cook them. So you kind of want to make them a little bit smaller than you think you're going to want them to be after they're cooked. I'm kind of just cutting them into little nuggets. Probably a good word for it. If you want extra dumplings, you can also double that, but I think that'll be a good amount for the amount of soup that I'm making. All right, let's check on our soup, which should be good. I just realized that I almost forgot to add the frozen vegetables, which is just going to be some peas and carrots, just some that I had in my freezer. It's about a cup to a cup and a half. I am also going to add 2 cups of milk. Half and half or heavy cream would work as well. And I'm also going to taste it for seasonings again. Now that I've added the milk and stuff to it, it does need a little bit more salt and pepper. Especially because there's potatoes in there, and potatoes tend to kind of zap flavors out of things. I think that we're good on like the rosemary and the thyme, but I am gonna add some more sage. I also feel like the chicken flavor isn't very strong, So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of chicken bouillon powder just to intensify the stock a bit. And I'm also gonna go ahead and start dropping in my dumplings into the soup, just trying to make sure that they don't stick to each other. Give that a gentle stir just to make sure none of the dumplings are sticking to each other. And then just cover that and simmer for 12 minutes. Another thing I want to get started on is her mashed potatoes. You know, she loves her mashed potatoes, so I'm going to get 8 cups of water brought up to a boil because I'm actually using 2 family-sized bags of the butter and herb instant mashed potatoes, which are her favorite. And each of those requires 4 cups of water. Because she loves mashed potatoes, so I like to make her bonus mashed potatoes. So there's some that'll go with the meatloaf and then some that I'll pack separately on the side. We've got a lot of stuff going on here, but a lot of stuff that's almost done. And I still have a lot of stuff to do as well. So dumpling soup is almost done. Meatloaf is out of the oven. The muffins are out of the oven. This is the scramble, so the shredded Swiss cheese, and then the egg mixture. The next thing on my list is we need to get her brownies in the oven. I need to make the mashed potatoes, the green beans. I need to make her sandwich for the week and her second dinner, which is going to be enchiladas. My water is hot for my potatoes. So as I mentioned, I'm doing 2 of the family-sized bags of butter and herb instant. Let's get those whisked together. My whisk is from Dollar Tree and it is starting to fall apart as well. I'm gonna cover those up with a lid and let them sit and rehydrate. We have a lot of things going on, so let's get some things kind of finished up and tidied up, and then we can move on. I think the first thing I'm gonna do is pack up these breakfast bowls. I always aim for about 6 of each meal. And I do try to measure just to make sure everything is consistent. So let's start with 1 cup of filling in each container. And then divide the rest. Just kind of distribute it. So it looks like it's about 1.5 cups to 1.25 cups. Get that nice and even on the bottom. And we're gonna divide some Swiss cheese over top. This is a good opportunity for me to ask you, what is your favorite omelet fillings? So like, what do you like in your omelet? Because I'm kind of using omelets as the inspiration for these breakfast bowls. All right, so there are her breakfast bowls prepped. The chicken pot pie soup is also ready. And this does look great, although I do wish it was a little bit more creamy. So I think next time I make this, I would use half and half in place of milk, because it looks more like gravy, which I guess is a little bit more authentic to chicken pot pie soup, but I do wish it looked a little bit more like a chowder. But it's full of vegetables, it's got chicken and dumplings. She really likes this one. I'm gonna let this cool a minute before I pack that one up. I love to doctor up mixes because it makes things a lot easier and faster. So I am actually making her some cheesecake brownies, but we're gonna be using brownie mix as the base. So I have this 1 box of this dark chocolate fudge brownie mix, which I am just gonna prepare according to the package instructions. 1 egg, a 1/2 cup of oil, and a 1/3 cup of water. I love these measuring cups because they not only have the 1/2 cup measure, but on the inside it marks a 1/3 cup. So I don't have to dirty 2 different measuring cups. I can just dirty 1. I'm gonna be making this into a 9x13 pan because I'm adding stuff to it. I'm gonna be adding the cheesecake batter to it. So I'm gonna stick this in the oven with some butter in it to get that melted. There's my 9x13 baking dish. That was about a 1/2 stick of butter, just melted in the bottom. Pour my prepared brownie mix right in there, and then I'm gonna use the same bowl to make the cheesecake topping since it's all gonna go in the same place anyways. Okay, spread that out. It's a lot of butter. Set that aside. I'm running out of room to set stuff aside though. And for the cheesecake filling, we're going to be doing an 8-ounce block of cream cheese softened to room temperature. And then to that, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar and 1 egg. Vanilla extract is optional, but you can also add that if you want to. And then we're just gonna mix that until it's smooth. So I did end up putting this in my blender because I neglected to cream the cream cheese first. So if you're gonna do this, do that. Make sure your cream cheese is nice and smooth. Then add your egg and your sugar. Otherwise, it's a little bit difficult to get it to incorporate smoothly. Now I'm just gonna pour the cream cheese part of it over top. And then using a butter knife, I'm gonna swirl the cream cheese in with the brownie mixture. Just to get a kind of swirl or like a marbled effect on top. And that is gonna get baked at 350 for about 25 minutes. These are cooled down enough I can put lids on them. These are the breakfast bowls. Next, we're gonna try to finish up the meatloaf preps. So we're gonna doctor up these mashed potatoes a little bit. I'm gonna be adding about a cup of sour cream. And I'm gonna be adding 1 stick of butter, which I'm gonna cube up beforehand, just so it melts a little easier. Now let's mix that all together until they're nice and smooth and creamy. Those butter and herb mashed potatoes with added sour cream and butter are absolutely perfect. I can see why she loves those so much. The only other thing I have to do to prep the meatloaf meal preps is going to be to prep some green beans. So we're going to start the same way as usual. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of oil, and preheat that over medium-high heat. All right. And to this, I'm going to add, this is a 32-ounce bag of frozen green beans. Same as how I did the potatoes, I'm going to add some water and let those steam for a minute. All right. And the green beans are steamed. Let's give those a toss. We'll let some of that water evaporate off of them. Well, I'm really just going to season those with salt and pepper. And those should be pretty much done as well. All of the muffins have cooled, so I'm packing those up in a little bakery box for her. Now, normally I would put ketchup on my meatloaf, but she doesn't like ketchup on her meatloaf, so we're just leaving it plain for her. I love that she loves this meatloaf. It's because it's really fun for me to make, because I don't get meatloaf very often, because I've told you before, Michael doesn't like meatloaf. It's one of his least favorite things, so being able to make it for her means that I get little end pieces, so I get to eat meatloaf once in a while. I think I'm gonna do it opposite. I'm gonna put the potatoes on the end and do the green beans in the middle. So I've started to include a container of just potatoes because her home aide did mention to me that they're one of her favorite things, and oftentimes she would have to just scoop potatoes out of the meal because that was what she wanted at that given time. So I told her I would start including just potatoes so that she could have mashed potatoes anytime she wanted. So there is her bonus potatoes. Now let's add the green beans. I'll let those cool a minute, especially the green beans I just added, and then we'll finish packing those up and they'll be good to go. But the brownies are done, so I'm gonna take those out of the oven. Now let's pack up her soup for this week, which is the chicken pot pie soup. And I might have enough to give her 3 containers of it. 2. Yep, looks like I'm gonna get 3 full containers. So I'm also gonna let that cool a smidge. It's still quite hot, so I'm gonna let that cool a smidge before I put the lid on it. So my kitchen is chaos, but so far we have 6 breakfast scrambles. Those are the ham with potatoes, peppers and onions and cheese. And then we have 3 full containers of chicken pot pie soup. We have meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans, as well as the bonus potatoes, and then 12 banana chocolate chip muffins and a full tray of cheesecake brownies. what I have left to do, I'm gonna make them enchiladas this week. I've never made that for them before, so we're gonna see how they like it. And then I'm also gonna make them some crab salad. That one's gonna be really quick and easy to throw together. But the next thing I wanna make is the enchiladas. So for these, I am using $73.27 because it was on sale this week, and I was able to get this package for $3.14. It's gonna be used to make taco meat, so the fat percentage really doesn't matter. Since I have a lot of extra while I brown up this ground beef, I'm going to add in some onion and bell pepper as well, about a cup of each. I'm going to add in a can of corn as well, and a packet of taco seasoning. And I know this is going to look strange, but the last ingredient I'm going to add is a can of refried beans. We're making kind of beef and bean enchiladas. Normally I would just use taco meat and refried beans, but I am adding in corn, peppers, and onions, so it's just going to look a little different because of that. I think enchiladas meal prep really well because they're kind of meant to be softer. So if I can get those beans, these are dry beans, but if I can get those incorporated, then we're good to go on the filling. I'm going to add a splash of water to help soften up those beans a bit and cover that to let it steam. So we've got a lot of things that I know that she likes and a couple of things that I'm unsure about. So we're testing out the enchiladas and we're also testing out the crab salad, but she loves seafood, so I can't imagine that she would have any issue with the crab salad. So yeah, I'm just grating up a block of mild cheddar or medium cheddar to go on the enchiladas. We are on the home stretch. This is my flour tortillas, just a package of plain flour tortillas. This has 20 in it. And I'm just gonna stuff each flour tortilla with a good scoop of that beef and bean mixture, and then just fold it over and plop it in the container. I'm gonna do 2 in each container. I love it when I gauge it just perfectly. I stuffed all 12 of those enchiladas and pretty much used up all the filling that I had. Now I have a can of just plain mild enchilada sauce, and we're just gonna pour some of that on top. Oops. Maybe we're gonna spoon some of it on top. This is kind of like my adaptation of the Taco Bell enchilada, which was beef, refried beans, and onions, and that was topped with enchilada sauce and cheese. I think she's gonna like it, but I will report back to you guys next week after she has tried them. Last thing is to distribute the shredded cheese. And then I'm gonna let those cool. I'm gonna let these cool just for a little bit because the filling is really hot, but everything else that went on them was cold. And the last thing I'm gonna be making is the crab salad. So for this, I have 2 pouches of this imitation crab chunk style. These are 8-ounce packages each, so about a pound. And I'm just gonna be mixing that with mayonnaise, salt, pepper, and some chopped celery. And that's gonna be the last one. This is definitely gonna be the easiest meal of all of them. And this is another one that I will have to report back and tell you how she likes it. We can add in some of our chopped celery. And lastly, we're gonna add some mayo. And season it up with a little bit of salt and pepper. All right, that's gonna go into a deli container. And that is the final meal. I'm gonna deliver this to her with including a package of hamburger buns so the sandwich can be assembled fresh. But overall, I think we made a really good time on this big meal prep session, trying to get back into the groove of things. So I did want to mention that, I did talk about doing a second $100 month thing, and I do still want to do that, but I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to juggle that with also cooking for her. So I may have to postpone it slightly, at least by a couple weeks, just until I can get in the swing of things. So I hope you guys are okay. I know I committed to a second month, and I still am going to do a second month. I just might need a little bit of patience as I try to figure out how it's going to work into my schedule. And we have to slice our cheesecake brownies. I might cut off the edges I know sometimes the edge is the best part, but these are cutting so nicely. These are still very warm, but not too warm to pack up. And they'll sit in the fridge and firm up overnight too. So I'm not delivering these meals today, I'm actually delivering them tomorrow. So there are the cheesecake brownies prepped. And I wasn't sure if I was gonna make it, but we finished with 24 minutes to spare. It feels so good to be doing this again. I really missed these meal prep videos. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. This in front of me is all of the food that I will be delivering to them tomorrow. So that includes 6 ham and Swiss breakfast scramble bowls. We have 6 meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans, 6 beef and bean enchiladas, cheesecake brownies. We have 3 containers of a chicken pot pie soup with dumplings, some crab salad along with some hamburger buns, a bonus tub of mashed potatoes, and 12 chocolate banana nut muffins. Some of these recipes are tried and true, so I know she's gonna love them. A couple of them are new, so hopefully she enjoys them. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you again soon.